personally remember like it was yesterday during my early days of dividend growth investing, well before I had a portfolio that was paying me $6,800 per month in dividends. I remember wanting to buy my first few shares of a dividend paying stock and not understanding anything about how it worked. When am I going to get paid a dividend? Where is the dividend even going to go? How do I even get started with this entire investing strategy? Well, in this video specifically, we're going to go over some of the most important dividend dates that you are going to need to know and understand as a dividend investor, trust me. Now, I promise you these dates are super easy to understand, and I'm going to share with you a free resource on how you can figure out these dates with any and every dividend paying stock and ETF across the entire stock market. So if you're a dividend investor still a little bit confused when it comes to some of these important dividend dates, make sure to stick around, drop a like down below, and let's get right into it. Real quick, for those that haven't already, make sure to go to the first link in my description and grab my new dividend investing ebook, where I share exactly how I went from $0 invested to now earning over $6,000 on a monthly basis and over $1 million invested in the markets. Along with the ebook, you're also going to receive my custom dividend tracker, where you can track your dividend progress on an ongoing basis and reach your dividend investing goals. So make sure to grab yourself a copy of my dividend investing ebook and the new dividend tracker today. It's the first link in my description. So if you're new to dividend investing, I'm sure at this point you've probably came across or heard of the term ex-dividend date, and this is a very, very important date when it comes to dividend investing. Now, it says right here in Investopedia, the ex-dividend date is the cutoff point for shareholders to be credited a pending dividend. So that explains exactly why this date is so important. If a dividend investor invests in a stock, the ex-dividend date is going to matter because that will determine on whether or not you're going to receive the following dividend, which, let's be real here, that's very important to everyone. So it says right here, what is the ex-dividend date? The ex-dividend date is one of the 4 stages that companies go through when they pay dividends to their shareholders. The ex-dividend date determines whether the buyer of a stock will be entitled to receive its up-and-coming dividend. The ex-dividend date is typically 1 day before the record date, and if an investor purchases a stock on the ex-dividend date or after, they will not be paid the next dividend payment. So you have to hold onto a stock before the ex-dividend date if you want to get paid that juicy dividend in the up-and-coming payments. Now, some key takeaways: the ex-dividend date or X-date, a lot of times they call it the X-date, marks the cutoff point for shareholders to be credited a pending stock dividend. And to receive this, you need to own the stock before the ex-dividend date. There are 4 dates to know when it comes to companies' dividends: the declaration date, the ex-dividend date, the record date, and the payable date. On the ex-dividend date, stock prices typically decline by the amount of the dividend. So for example, let's say a stock is $1 and it pays a 10-cent dividend to shareholders. On ex-dividend date, the stock will probably most likely go down to 90 cents because of course it has to account for the dividend payouts. Next, it says understanding the ex-dividend date. A dividend is typically a cash payment that a company pays to its shareholders as a reward for investing in its stock or equity shares. As companies generate profit, they usually accumulate or save those profits in an account called retained earnings. Some companies reinvest those retained earnings back into the company, while others may take a portion of the retained earnings and pay it to shareholders through dividends. Now, next, very important, to understand ex-dividend date, we need to understand the stages companies go through when they pay dividends to shareholders. Like we said, there's 4 important dates. Number 1 is declaration date. The first of these stages is this. This is a date in which a company announces that it'll be issuing a dividend in the future. So the declaration date is basically the announcement date. A company might say, yes, we're going to be issuing a 10-cent, 20-cent dividend, whatever the case might be. So that's the first of the entire process. The next step is the record date, which is when the company examines its current list of shareholders to determine who will receive a dividend. Only those who are registered as shareholders in the company's books as of the record date will be entitled to receive dividends. Now, the third stage is the ex-dividend date, which we talked about. This is going to determine which of the shareholders that were recorded are entitled to receive the dividend altogether. Typically, the ex-dividend date is set 1 business day before the record date. But again, I'm going to show you a free resource on how you can see all these different dates for free online for any stock or ETF. Stay tuned. Now, lastly, the payable date. The 4th and final stage is the payable date, also known as payment date. This payable date is when the dividend is actually paid to eligible shareholders. So the payable date is basically payday. If you made it through all the stages and you're going to receive a dividend on the payable date, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get paid. Now, a quick example of this entire process, it says to illustrate, consider a company that declares an up-and-coming dividend on Tuesday, July 30th, if the record date is Thursday, August 8th. The ex-dividend date would be Wednesday, August 7th, meaning that anyone who bought the stock on August 7th or later would not receive dividend. I repeat, August 7th or later would not receive the dividend. Conversely, shareholders who bought shares of the stock, let's say on August 6th or earlier, would be entitled to receive the dividends since it's one business day before the ex-dividend date. In our example, the payable date is going to be September 6th. So for this example, the declaration date is July 30th, ex-dividend date is August 7th, record date is the 8th, and payable date is the 6th. Now there's lots of different free ways online where you can figure out when a stock's ex-dividend date is, when a stock's payable dividend date is, all that different. One of the easiest ways, honestly, is just to Google it, but here's a free resource. No, I'm not sponsored by them, seekingalpha.com. If you go up here on the top and type in any stock or ETF, you can basically get taken to that stock or ETF's main page. Then you click on dividends, scroll down, and then under dividend summary, we have all the information, more or less right here. It says last dividend announced, this is for Apple stock, 25 cents. Next dividend date was on May 10th, 2024. The payout date was May 16th, 2024. The record date was the 13th, and the declaration date was the 2nd. Apple's dividend is also paid quarterly. Some dividends are paid monthly or biannually, etc. So now that you guys know all the important dates when it comes to dividend investing, I hope that you're no longer confused, because if you're anything like me in the early days, all these things were a little bit confusing from the start. But now lastly, most importantly, I have a question for you guys down below. How long, as of this moment, have you personally been dividend investing? I'll go first. I've been investing for around 7 or 8 years now. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.